Hi, this is Rob with Federal Finance CPE. Today we are going to go deeper into what reimbursable work is in a definition that I think is easy to understand. We're going to talk about an example we're going to use in future modules to explain what reimbursable work is, and we're going to break down what reimbursable is and isn't. So let's get started. So what is reimbursable work? Well, in simple terms, it's when one federal agency provides goods or services to another and is paid back for that work. Remember, the federal agencies do many different things. The government's very big. So sometimes there's an agency that does something very well, and it's beneficial to piggyback off that expertise. For example, doing background checks. The FBI and some other agencies within DoD and DHS do a good job of doing background checks. So if you're, let's say, Department of Agriculture, does it make sense to build a capability of doing your own background checks? Or should you reach out to those agencies that do that often? So that's where reimbursable work really comes to play. It's finding efficiencies with another agency that does something that you need or actually has contracts in place that can do it well. So we're going to break that down a little further, though. So a reimbursable agreement, there's going to be a mutually agreed upon terms. Who provides what, how is it being paid, how is it being delivered? A contract, general terms and conditions. Those are going to be agreed upon. And in these reimbursable work, you have sellers, and sellers, they're the ones who perform, right? They provide the good, they provide the service. Then you have buyers. These are the agencies that are reimbursing. So they're actually paying for the goods or service ultimately. So the seller does the work. Let's say they have contractors or employees. They're paying those salaries, they're paying those invoices, but the buyer reimburses those. And that's where the money comes from. So why this all matters? Well, first is budget authority. So we already talked about how there's buyer and seller, and they're going to be different budget authority depending what they're doing. So a buyer is going to probably just use their appropriation budget authority commonly to get what they need, right? But when you're the seller, you're going to use a different type of budget authority, not appropriation. You're going to have your offsetting collections. And that's allowing you to accept those orders and spend from it. The reason why it matters is just accounting transactions. Reimbursable work can be a little tricky for a couple of reasons. One is because you are dealing with revenue. You're dealing with recording these transactions. You have budgetary, you have proprietary entries. And that itself can be a little complicated, especially when you think not many government accountants really get deep into revenue accounting, right? We're the government. Now let's layer on one other aspect, which is consolidation. We're all part of the federal government, the whole government. So we consolidate our transactions, right? So if a buyer is recording a payable for services that were provided, the seller should be recording that asset, right? AR. They need to match. So it's a little complicated. Going to that reporting just builds right into it, right? We have a couple reports and financial reports that relate to reimbursable work that come up. You'll be able to track it, such as the SF-132, thinking of those budget authorities, and SF-133, which is your budget execution. And the SF-132, it says your budget authority, but it's an apportionment schedule. And the fourth thing we have is just internal controls. Now, this is, to me, reminding me of standard commercial accounting, right? You have your controls over accepting orders, when it's recorded on your books. And once again, reimbursable work, would you get involved with the budgetary proprietary entries, can be a little complex. Now, what reimbursable work isn't? So it's not a grant, right? This isn't one agency giving funds to another to do something, right? No, just to do it without any expectation. This is an agreement. They're not just saying, hey, here's some funds go off, do great things. No, they're getting something. It's also not a procurement in the standard sense. We're not going out bidding, getting contractors, making an agreement. Now, it's an agreement between two federal agencies, but it's not that standard like FAR contract that you might expect. The last is that it's not going to be like recorded as a direct appropriation for the provider, right? Remember, they have an offsetting collections budget authority. It's flowing through. Yeah, that's a differentiation. It's going to come through the apportionment schedule, and it's ultimately Congress decides, right, how much you're able to do work, if you're able to do work for others or not, and how much you can do for. We're going to go into why agencies use it. And the common reasons are just shared services. So some agencies just do things really well, and they're like a center of excellence. And agencies rely on that. Maybe it's doing payroll, for your federal employees. Maybe it's creating financial statement or financial management. There's some agencies that do that really well in this shared service. And that kind of bleeds into my second point of just specialized capacity. Certain agencies have the specialized capacity and they can bring on more, and you get that efficiency. This goes into the third point, procurement efficiency. Imagine if you had 10 agencies procuring the same thing, the same service, and you have each of them with their own contract officers. They have their own administrative bureaucracy supporting them. That can be a little inefficient versus you have maybe one agency procuring a good or service and others going through that agency to use it. Build some efficiency. And then going to my fourth point, avoiding duplication. It allows you to avoid having that, 10 agencies doing the same thing. So let's talk about some legal foundation. Ultimately, though, your ability to do reimbursable work is going to be in public law. For our case, we're going to kind of focus in on the Economy Act. It's pretty interesting. I'll sum it up. Basically, it's where agencies are able to purchase through others. But here's the 3 steps that need to happen for the Economy Act to work, for your agency to purchase something from another agency, right? It has to be in the best interest of the government. It seems self-explanatory, but it's a law. It cannot be obtained as conveniently or economically by contracting. So remember this, just because you know an agency can do something, if you can obtain it quicker, more economical by going off, maybe they got a bad deal for whatever reason. Maybe they don't exactly do what you need. You don't use the Economy Act as an easy button if you can get it more economically by contracting. And the third thing you need one of these 3 things. It has to be made under an existing contract, what your purchase is. Service agency has the capacity, not in the requesting agency. It makes sense, right? You can't do it yourself. So, you have to go to another agency. And the third is servicing agency is specifically authorized by law or regulation to purchase such supplies or services on behalf of other agencies. Just saying that what needs to happen. They need to be able to do it. So let's talk about a scenario we're going to use throughout this. We're going to have buyer seller. We're going to have NOAA is the buyer, and you have NASA is the seller. And what they're talking about, we're going to talk about satellite launch services. Maybe I'm being inspired by the recent Artemis moon mission, not a satellite, I know, but it's space, so go with me. And we're going to have a $500,000 agreement. It makes it easy for math, but essentially on our scenario, we're thinking NOAA has a satellite. They want to get into outer space. NASA got rockets. They have the ability and contracts to get things into outer space. Perfect match made in heaven. NOAA goes to NASA, get that thing in space. There we go. So when we look at buyer and seller, here's just some things you need me to be aware of. A buyer needs a service, buyer funds a service, seller performs a service, and they earn the revenue and receivables from that service. That's a real down and dirty buyer versus seller. It becomes very important when you start thinking about your accounting entries and what needs to occur. Examples of some reimbursable work we talked about already: launch services for satellites, maybe. We also have IT support. You have training. I mentioned shared services such as financial statement, maybe handling payroll, doing background checks, finger checks. Could be a lot of things. Engineering support, just really it could be anything, but these are some common ones. So going forward, there's some questions we're going to answer really. It's where does authority come from? Budget authority, right? We talked about briefly, but we're going to go deeper into that. When is revenue recognized? This one I see commonly trips people up, specifically when they think in cash basis versus accrual, because you recognize revenue when it's earned, not when it's billed. And because I know many of our agencies use really old systems that just frankly can't do some of these revenue recognition on a timely basis. So you have to do some workarounds. Other questions we're going to ask, what happens if billing is delayed? Going back to that statement, right? Some agencies, the system records revenue when billed, right? That creates an issue. What if billing is delayed? And then last is the effects on financial reporting. Moreover, where is it? Where are you going to find reimbursable work in your financial statements? Okay, so I'm just going to recap, what reimbursable work is. It's federal to federal, more or less. There are some exceptions, but federal to federal. Buyer-seller relationship is going to be legally supported, and it's going to be connected to both budgetary and proprietary accounting and show up in your financial reporting. With that, I want to say let's get ready for Module 2. We're going to talk about where the budget authority comes from. We're going to talk about reimbursable work, how you're going to see it in public law, and how you're going to see it controlled in the apportionment schedules. With that, I want to say thank you. If you want some Federal Finance focused CPE, check us out. We have a great first course for free. And thanks again for your time.